what's up, y'all? So this is crazy story part 4. Y'all, they wasn't scared of me. Mm-mm. They didn't buck. They didn't move. They wasn't scared of me. Even though I called corporate on, they still wasn't scared of me. So, I told y'all that the lady from the corporate office said that it was gonna be 374 or whatever when I got there or whatever to pick up my car or whatever. So when I got there, they charged me the price that they quoted me yesterday. And I said, the lady from corporate said, oh, hold on, let me start over. Let me start from here. Hold on, wait. Let me start here. I called them back at 4 o'clock and was like, do you know when y'all coming to pick me up or whatever so I can get my car? Because I want to make sure I got my car before y'all close. So he was like, well, he'll pick you up when his job is done. He asked, but I told him he couldn't come right now. Right now, he got to do 4 oil changes and he got to change some tires, so he won't be there right now. But I had called at 1 o'clock, and so 1 o'clock turned into 4 o'clock. I was like, let me get a phone call these days. People before they close and they ain't got my car. So I called back. This is where we are. I called back and I said, so do y'all know what time, Mr. Boss answered the phone. I said, do y'all know what time y'all come to get me? I said, because I want to make sure y'all ain't, he was like, well, he already asked. And I told him he couldn't come because he had to do about 4 oil changes and he had changed 2 sets of tires. So he'll come get you at the end of the day when his job is done. I said, okay. I said, I just want to make sure that y'all ain't going to close and I ain't got my car. I said, so y'all is come to pick me up before y'all close, right? He said, yeah. So they didn't mention that I called corporate on them. They didn't mention nothing. I didn't mention nothing or whatever. We all on schedule. Everybody on the same sheet of music. Everybody playing and being nice. But y'all know it's a double story going on in the background. Okay, so when I hang up, my phone ring right back. So the guy say, okay, I'm on my way to get you. I'm on my way now. I said, okay. Yo, I tell you the truth. As soon as I hung up the phone up, you would have thought the man was already in my area waiting on me to call. You would have thought he was in my garage and just pulled out. As soon as I said click, my doorbell said ding dong. So I went to the door, and then he was in a pearl white BMW, and he came and he opened up my door for me. Oh, this nice service, and I called corporate on you. What is going on here? They weren't scared of me. Okay, so I got in the car and we was talking. He was like, it's a hot day out here. I was like, yeah, it's real hot or whatever. He's like, we're gonna get you taken care of. So we had our little dialect, this in the car drive. So you from Decatur? Yeah, I'm from Decatur. You from here? No, I'm from LA, but my brother live out here or whatever. So I moved out here. What part you from? I'm from South Central. This was the car ride. It's like, okay, I ain't never been to LA, but I heard it's expensive to live out there. It is. So what brings you out here? Because it's expensive to live here or whatever. And it's cheaper to live here. It's expensive to live there and it's cheaper to live here. I'm like, okay. I was going to say, so I've heard a lot about LA. I heard people are out there sleeping in their cars and stuff. But it's dirt cheap to live here. No, it's cheap to live here, but 20 years ago, it was dirt cheap to live here. He was like, you are right about that. So, you born and raised from here? Yeah, I'm born and raised from here. I'm from Illinois, but my family is originally from Tennessee. I did live in Cincinnati and I did live in Atlanta. Okay, cool. What part of Tennessee? My family is from Brownsville and Nashville and Memphis. And so we kept talking or whatever. And he said, well, we're going to get you up here, Miss Reed. We're going to get you taken care of. I said, okay. So I said, did this car give you any problems? This BMW? No, it don't give me no problems. But see, he's the mechanic. No, it don't give me no problems if you know how to work on the car yourself or whatever. It ain't really so much of the parts of the car, it's the labor. He talking to me, the mechanic talking to me, which I already know. It ain't so much of the parts of the car, it's the labor. But if you know how to do it yourself, I said, oh, so you do all the work on yourself? Yeah, and I got 5 other vehicles or whatever. I was going to take the truck, but the truck didn't have no gas, so this is my baby right here. Okay. I said, well, I used to own a convertible Volkswagen. I said, but that thing was giving me a problem. I said, a lot of these cars give me problems. Well, if you don't know how to work on the cars, then they can give you a problem. Yeah, I don't know nobody and stuff like that. So I just went ahead and traded it off or whatever and got some, more reliable. Yeah, you need to get more, American cars. German cars, they tend to be. Well, I said, well, you know what? I really like Volvos and I really like Saabs. He said, well, I'm not, he said, Volvos are very nice. They are very nice. I'm not a fan too much of Saabs. I said, well, I don't like the lower end Saabs, but as you start going up the chain, then the Saabs get fly. You know what I'm saying? He said, yeah, but Volvo is very nice. I said, yeah. I said, well, I tell you what. I said, I tell you what else kind of truck I like. I said, what kind of truck you got? He said, oh, it's a Tahoe. I said, okay. I said, well, I'm gonna tell you what else kind of car I like. I said, I like those them Dodge Rams. I said, but I'm not a fan of Dodge. I said, they be breaking down and having problems a lot. I said, but I like them dualies. I said, but you got to be moving some weight to drive that dually. You got to be making some money, Jack. You got to be moving furniture. You got to be hauling grass. You got to to drive that thing, especially the one with that long bed that got them Rams in the headlights. That's the ones that I really, really like. I said, but you got to be, man, because they got that tank and they got that reserve tank. You got to be moving some weight to be driving a dually. If you're a dually boy, you better be having some dually business. So we was talking. And then he was back on these cars like these Audis can be a problem. I said, yeah. I said, I'm not too much. I like Audi the way Audi looks, but I'm not too much of a fan of Audi. I like the Audi A7 or A8, A8, whatever the hell it is. I said, but Audi give you a problem. He said, yeah, especially with them oil pans and a lot of problems with the oil. He said, yeah, they do give you a problem. So we was just rapping. And then we got up to the door or whatever, and he opened up the door for me. He came around and opened up my door out the pearl white BMW, and I strolled on up in there, finna pay my discounted price. I thought because I had called and told them they wasn't scared of me. They wasn't scared. None of them. It was about five of them. They were supposed to have been scared of me. They weren't scared. And so I said, I want to pay for my car, and he gave me the total. And I said, oh, I thought that she said that I got 15% off the total service. He said it is 15% off the total service, but it wasn't. It was the same price he quoted me. I said, okay. I said, I'll talk to her about it, no problem. So I stuck my card in and I paid it or whatever. And he didn't flinch. None of them, the one behind him didn't flinch. The other one didn't flinch. None of them flinched. They wasn't scared. And so he said, I'm gonna get you your receipt or whatever. And he said, let me get your key. So he got my key. So I didn't know how to put it on there in that thin ring. I ain't like that. I said, do you know how to put this on there? He said, yeah. So he put it on there. He was putting it on a thin one. I said, could you put it on a thicker ring? He said, yeah. So he was trying to get it open or whatever. And so he pulled out this little tool or whatever. And he opened the little ring up and he put my key on there. He said, I use this way. Don't no fingers get hurt or no fingernails get broken. I said, yeah, me too. Because I don't know how to do it too much or whatever. So he said, let me get your receipt and everything gonna be fine. He said, and he got me my receipt. He said, you already go, you already cashed out. I said, okay. I said, where's my car? I said, I don't see it. And he said, oh, he took me outside. He said, it's over there. I said, okay. So I got in the car and I thanked him, right? Well, when I got home, I looked up at the top of my window, because see, I'm old school. I'm still the same old G. I looked at the top of my window. I didn't see no oil sticker. So I called up there. I said, hey, this is the lady that just came and picked up her Honda. I said, I noticed that I didn't have an oil sticker. I said, and I want to know, how do I know when my oil get changed if I ain't got no oil sticker? I said, y'all don't do oil stickers no more? And he said, well, the question is, Miss Reed, did you have an oil sticker to begin with? I said, no. I said, because the dealership, when I had my last oil change, they didn't put one on there, and I called and said something to them. And I didn't know when to have my oil change. I said, but my body, I'm a thermometer, so I know I can read the temperature. So my body lets me know when it's time to have things done. But I really don't want to rely on it if I can have a sticker in it. I don't need to use that type of energy. And he said, well, Miss Reed, it's come to the point where a lot of times we change these car, or we do oil changes or whatever, and we're coming to find out, as times change and days change and people change, that a lot of people don't like that oil sticker in the corner of their car or whatever. So if you don't have one when you came, we don't put one on there. But if you would like a sticker, then we'll put one on there. I said, yeah. I would like a sticker, because how do I know when to change my oil? Like, I said, I got to have a sticker. And he said, okay, Miss Reed, you swing by and we'll get you a sticker in the corner. If you want a sticker in the corner of the car for the oil, we'll get you a sticker. I said, okay. So I told him, I said, won't be today. I said, because I'm off. I said, it'll probably be on my way home or another day off. He said, okay. He said, whenever you come, Miss Reed, ain't no problem. We'll get you a sticker in the corner of your car if that's what you want. That's what I want. I'm still the same OG. Ain't nothing changing. I don't want like all this new stuff. I like who I am and what I'm doing, and I'm just my child's father, and I like to do things according to the book, and I like to do things the right way. I want a sticker in the left side of my car so I can see when I got to get my oil changed. I want my sticker right there. Even though other people want to look fancy and they don't want this, I need to know when I need my next oil change. Y'all, they wasn't scared of me at all. They wasn't scared of me. They didn't flinch. So I told them that. Well, so I still called the corporate or whatever. I was supposed to get my 15% off, which I didn't. And then she said the big boss gonna look into this stuff and pull my receipts, and then they gonna look and see if anything going on up in there, if any funny business going on up in there, and any number handling wrong going up in there, and any mishaps going up in there, whatever. So I'm gonna wait 2 business days, because I ain't gonna call. I'm gonna wait 2 business days, talk to the big boss and tell him I didn't get my discount, and tell him what happened or whatever. And that'll take care of that, hopefully. Y'all, they weren't scared of me. They didn't